suspects. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Monday morning, the 12th of January. Just a couple of days, only 2 days left before Uganda goes to the polls to elect their next president, to elect their next, set of leaders at the parliamentary level, and then of course things will follow subsequently. The reason as to why I mentioned that, even though it is not a footballing matter, is because, like I told you guys yesterday, there is an overwhelming expectation that internet will get shut down in Uganda, particularly, possibly, starting in the wee hours of Wednesday night, leading to Thursday, which is when the polls are due. And then from there on, we do not know how soon it will be turned back on. It could be until the final results are announced. It could be much later on, contrary to our expectations. But should that be the case, or should events take that course, please do bear with us in absentia during that period of time. So there's going to be a little bit of period of uncertainty in regards to the availability of the internet, so which will impact or affect our delivery on here on Football Tribe UG. So please take note of those and keep them in mind, so that when you do not see us surface on your screens, you're not left so much wondering in regards to what's to happen, in regards to what may have happened or to what may have befallen your favorite football updates channel. Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. Apologies. Was just having our audios tested just to make sure everything does check out on where it should be. So this beautiful morning, anyway, we'll be speaking about Manchester United after they held positive talks with their former midfielder, Michael Carrick. And then we'll talk about Real Madrid falling in the El Clasico as they lost by 3-2 to Barcelona in the Spanish Super Cup final that was played over there in Saudi Arabia, which means that Barcelona have won it 3 times in the last 4 years. So, I mean, we'll get to discuss it. But yeah, that game did happen last night. Inter Milan and Napoli shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw. Scott McTominay on the score sheet in that one for Napoli, in a game in which manager Antonio Conte was sent off, was given a red card. So, we'll perhaps, if time allows us, we may get to discuss that as well. So yeah, that will be the gist of our discussion this morning. And I mean, where do we even start it all? I think there's only one place to start with, and that's Manchester United. For all the right reasons, Man United, we do all to start with you. You're making news for both the right and the wrong reasons, depending on which way you look at it. It's subjective in nature. One would want to think otherwise. But all right, let's start with yesterday, because yesterday Manchester United were in action against Brighton and Hove Albion at Old Trafford in the FA Cup. And unfortunately for Manchester United, that in that late kickoff that kicked off at 7:30 p.m. East African time, they fell to Brighton and Hove Albion. That's in the FA Cup third round. They got beat by 2-1 in a game in which we saw Gruda score an early goal in the 12th minute, while a 64th minute strike by their former striker in Danny Welbeck made it 2-0 at the time. Released Benjamin Sesko, who was the goal scorer for what turned out to be a mere consolation in the 85th minute of the game, with the brilliant header of Bruno Fernandes's corner kick. Now, Harry Maguire, of course, at the depth of it, as had been his case during the Olympic Lyon last season in the UEFA Europa League, thought he had an opportunity to restore parity for the Red Devils, but that ball did not go in as it was saved by the goalkeeper Jason Stell of Brighton and Hove Albion. Now, I don't know. Anyway, this is it's not. I don't want to say this is the worst Manchester United performance that I've seen this season, because I've seen quite a couple. Even if we were to bring back last season, but it was a very very dull performance for Manchester United. It may not be the absolute worst, but it was dull. Dull in the sense that they lacked intensity, they lacked effort. I thought they fell short, really really short on effort. It's like they lacked strength. It's like United had played that the same setup of team had played a game just a day earlier on. It felt like they were away from home. It felt like it didn't feel like there were lots of ideas, but it felt like they did not have purpose. You know, it felt like to them they were playing a preseason game, a preseason friendly, and while overall they ended up dominating possession to the tune of 60%, depending on where you check, according to online statistics, but this one's according to live score, and they had as many as 8 shots on target with 8 off targets, and compared to Brighton is 4 on target and 5 off target. Now, those statistics, and as many as the 6 corner kicks they had, maybe a little deceiving. Why? Because when I was watching the game, I did not feel at one point that the game was on edge and that it was Manchester United putting it on the edge. One, Brighton were very, very measured and controlled in how they played. They knew well that they were away from home, so they did not overplay their hand. They did not overplay their advantage, even at the time when you felt that they had it. At the resumption of the second half, Brighton sort of sat back as if they were going to play in a low block, but that was just to sort of go through a certain phase of the game in which they expected a barrage of attacks from Manchester United. And I thought they went through that period unscathed. And then they went on to threaten. Every time they went in front, it felt like a missed opportunity for Brighton. And yet the same could largely not be said about Manchester United. So that's the kind of game I did witness. Unless you guys witness something else, contrary to my observations, you will let me know down in the comment section. But that was my observation in as far as that game was concerned. So really, when you think, I looked at that game and I thought to myself, if Darren Fletcher was trying to convince or persuade his bosses to give him this job as an interim for the remainder of the season, then that was not a good audition. Perhaps the players let him down. And I remember I was watching this game with a couple of Manchester United fans. I remember telling them, or us having a discussion that, look, whereas managers get so many things wrong, they're not always at fault. They're not always the ones in wrong. And it's told them, look at how those players are applying themselves on the pitch. Is that effort enough? Are they playing as a team that is a goal down? And subsequently, when they went 2 goals down, are they playing like that kind of team? They did not play with any urgency whatsoever, in my opinion. So I felt the game lacked that bit of intensity. It did not give you the feel of being at Old Trafford in the sense of you being a visitor for Brighton. Brighton, even though they had to defend, they felt it's like they were playing at the Amex Stadium. That's what it felt like. So for me, largely, United did not turn up. They did not turn up well. And the result in the end showed that their performance was wanting, and they lost by 2 goals to 1. Benjamin Sesko had another opportunity in which he could have scored as well, but it was never to be. And just like that, United, there's this individuality thing amongst their players. In some cases, you would see the selfishness of Matthias Cunha. Should he be selfish to finish off chances, but selfish in either holding on to the ball a little too long and ending up conceding possession? It happened in moments with Patrick Dogu. So Shialasi, I mean, unfortunate for him because Man United finished that game with a manless following Shialasi's sending off. Now, according to Darren Fletcher, his first booking, the yellow card shouldn't have been a bookable offense. Now, the second, he does agree, perhaps, is a yellow card. I do not think there's a contestation to the facts that it was a yellow card for what he did, because he thought when the ball went out, he thought it should be a Manchester United throw-in, and the linesman signaled to the contrary, as well as the referee, so much to his frustration, especially that they were 2-1 down, and they were chasing that game, trying to get something back in the game. And for me, of course, this was in the 89th minute. Now, whereas to the letter of the law, to the execution of what the rules say about the game, the referee Simon Hooper was right. I thought he was wrong. I thought he was harsh. I thought it's a teachable moment for Shialasi. I mean, for a player who is only 18 years of age, who until the Burnley game, I did not know him. For Manchester United fans that knew plenty well about him, kudos to you. But I, for one, I did not know enough about him. So, and I remember watching him against Burnley when he came on. He hit the crossbar and had another shot go slightly over the top. And even yesterday, he had an attempt to go, over the top. He likes to go from distance. He seems to have a sharp and sweet left foot. He looks brilliant. I thought for the referee, Simon Hooper, that should have been a teachable moment for Simon Hooper to say, to look at the situation and say, look, this is a young kid. And whereas the rules may dictate that this should be the course of action, let me use this as a teachable moment. Let me use this as a teach moment and show this kid and extend this kid an olive branch or a bit of courtesy. He got caught up in the moment. It was sheer frustration, nothing deliberate in the sense of disrespecting the game or bringing it in disrepute or anything like that. So for me, I thought, bearing that he was already on a yellow card, he should have walked over to that boy and said, look here, boy, you do not do that. It doesn't matter what game. It doesn't matter where you are on the pitch. For as long as the game is still on, you do not do that. You do not express your frustration because it's going to get you sent off. You're already on a yellow card, and I should be giving you a second yellow card to send you off. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you the benefit of that emotions got the better of you, and you're such a young kid. You're going to make so many mistakes during the course of the game. But this moment should be a lesson to you. And whereas the yellow card that subsequently culminates into the red card that leads to his sending off, in itself, he will have to learn from. I thought the other teaching moment, I thought that for a referee with the seniority of Simon Hooper, he missed an opportunity to send that message. Now, one will argue it's not his responsibility to teach Manchester United players the rules of the game. It's not that they do not know the rules of the game. They do know the rules of the game. But for a young kid like him, like Shialasi, he lost his head. And whereas he ought to know the rules of the game, they may not be on his grasp or on his fingertips, as you'd expect a Bruno Fernandes. So for me, I thought that was another critical moment in the game, but it was what it was. So United got knocked out at the third round of the FA Cup. That means at the first time of asking, as had been the case in the EFL Cup when they got knocked out by Grimsby Town. Now, this is with Darren Fletcher as interim. So that means he's lost one, he's drawn the other. Speaking of being interim, Manchester United are still hunting down for their interim coach until the end of the season. Now, late last week, Manchester United held positive talks with their former boss, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and club legend, as well as a former player, they held positive talks. We're talking about Organa Solskjaer, who came in around December 2018, following the sacking of Jose Mourinho, took on as an interim, did tremendously well, got handed a contract. I think it was a 3-year contract. I took them through the 2019-2020 season, then started them through the 2020-2021 campaign. And it was during the course of that he got sacked. And when he got sacked, Michael Carrick took over as an interim. And at the end of the season, he left the club. Sorry, did he reach the end of the season? No, he did not reach the end of the season, because Ralph Rangnick was brought on as interim coach slash consultant. So when Michael Carrick eventually leaves Manchester United, he goes over to Middlesbrough, where he did fairly well. I can't say he did tremendously well, because I do not know the ins and outs of Borough. That's a Middlesbrough in terms of their resource allocation. That if you were good enough, possibly the expectation should have been that he gets them promoted, but that never came to happen. So at the end of the 2024-2025 championship season, he hung up his boots and said goodbye to Middlesbrough. So he's a free man out there. So Michael Carrick, they've held positive talks, according to Fabrizio Romano, with Manchester United, and he's increasingly growing confident he could get the job from Ineos. So according to Fabrizio Romano, Michael Carrick had a positive contact with Ineos and Manchester United management, advancing to become the new interim manager. Manchester United will announce new coach this week, and Carrick is hopeful to get the job. Solskjaer is still waiting for the club's decision. So the club indeed have a decision to make. We know that Ruud van Nistelrooy was the other candidate mentioned in the realms of who could be interim manager at Manchester United. But for us, the conversation or the vision or the insight into Manchester United does extend beyond what could or should happen this season, particularly. While, yes, they need an interim manager to see out the season, the first question we do ask ourselves, is this season cut out for them? Do you write it off? Do you consider it a loss? Try and finish it the best way you can and march on? Absolutely not. It's not gone. It's not a loss. Yes, they've had troubling scenes, getting knocked out of the EFL Cup by Grimsby Town, getting knocked out against Brighton for the first time of asking at the third round, losing their manager in Ruben Amorim. That's all negative. That's all bad. But this season can still be salvaged. Why? Because prior to the sacking of Ruben Amorim, there were only 3 points behind fourth place, behind Liverpool, who are in fourth place. Now, that tells you that an interim good manager could probably walk in and get them UEFA Champions League football, the bare minimum Europa League football. When I say UEFA Champions League football, it's not waiting to see how Premier League teams do or perform in this season is UEFA Champions League to possibly earn the Premier League a 5th slot. No, we are talking about them finishing 4th quite entirely. Or even better, because they are capable of that. We still have as many as 21 Premier League games left to play in as far as this season is concerned. So with that in mind, you can't help it think that 17 games is one too many, So if you had to say, to let's say, find out how many points you could garner out of that, if, for example, and not that it is the expectation, but assuming Manchester United were to be perfect, that is 51 points available for the taking. For a team that already has 30 points, or possibly 31, that's an 82-point finish. Now, of course, we know they're not going to be perfect. They could be far from that. But nonetheless, let's take the assumption that they take 3 quarters of those points. What would the expectation be? What would the expectation be? Apologies. So that would be about 38 points. So 38 points plus what they already have in 31, that takes them to 69. It could finish them somewhere really, really good. Now, of course, the objective for Manchester United is one to get back into Europe, and the best place in Europe is the UEFA Champions League. The next second best thing is the UEFA Europa League, where they got beat in the finals last season by a goal to nil, thanks to Tottenham, for courtesy of Brennan Johnson for Tottenham to win their first major piece of silverware in 17 years. So, but the point I'm trying to make is that the season for them is not done. It's far from it. You cannot count it as a loss. They still have everything to fight for. I do not contend they will win the Premier League table, but I do contend they still have something to say about this season. The Premier League table this campaign has been so volatile that the rate at which it changes does change faster than a points that changes positions, So that should be an indicator for Manchester United that it's not done and dusted. 32 points with Liverpool now at 35 points, still only 3 points adrift of top four. So that's quite very achievable. And even when you look at further beyond that, and you look at Aston Villa, who are third with 43 points, still, yes, that's 11 points. An 11-point deficit. We've seen teams overturn that to win a Premier League title. So what is it not to say that United cannot overturn it for third place finish? Like I said, it all depends how things go down with the interim boss, whoever that will be. But the expectation is that this week, Manchester United will come out and announce the interim manager or head coach until the end of the season, and then we will take things on from there. Now, speaking of the summer, where do then Manchester United go from there? Now, there's a set of managers that I expected, I think, to be out of contract at the end of the season. Oliver Glasson at Crystal Palace. I don't know to the effect of Andoni Iraola, but he's in and around that mix. Of course, managers like Kian McKenna have been talked about. Do you wait for the World Cup end to speak to Mauricio Pochettino or Thomas Tuchel? Or do you wait for a Carlo Ancelotti? Now, any manager that Manchester United appoint at the end of the season as a permanent manager, it will be another mistake from the onset. It will be another wrong decision from the onset until they prove themselves otherwise. Why? The reason as to why I say that is because we've seen this script so many times. Because whereas I would advocate for a more experienced manager, United have brought in quite a couple and they've not worked out. They've had Luis van Gaal, they've had Jose Mourinho, arguably some of the most experienced managers you would have in world football. And they've ended up parting ways with those. They've tried the newbies of Ruben Amorim, Erik ten Hag, and look where they are. So, for a team that has sacked their 10th manager, or that has had their 10th manager since the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson, that is almost 13 years ago, that's one too many changes. That's one too many changes. So I would say it's a mistake from the onset, and the first start is because in every job or every sphere of yourself, when you get a new role, a new position, you ought to prove yourself at some point. But with football managers, or like in any other place, sometimes you come with your own pedigree. You come with your own reputation. So Thomas Tuchel would be walking into that team with a reputation of his own. Depending on how the World Cup goes, that reputation could be better or could have slightly diminished if things go bad for him with England at the World Cup, So there's a lot of considerations. Mauricio Pochettino, he showed us that he is capable of building a team. He did that at Tottenham Hotspur. The climax of that was in 2019 when they reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League, but also had at one point that team finished second. So he has the capabilities of building a team. The question is, are Manchester United willing to give the next manager the grace of time and courtesy to build that team for them? The other thing is to do with they have a mission or an ambition to win the Premier League title in the 2027 2028 Premier League campaign. That means we have to go through. Actually, we're left with one season. That's 2026, 2027. So this season, consider it almost gone for them. And then, so that means the manager, whoever they choose, only has next season to build his title winning squad for the subsequent season. Is it achievable? Absolutely, yes, it is achievable. Oftentimes, I've made reference to Pep Guardiola, who, when he came in at Manchester City, he did not win any piece of silverware in his debut campaign 2016-2017. And yet, in the subsequent season, he started winning the Premier League table with the Premier League trophy with a record 100 points, the EFL Cup. So clearly, anything is possible. However, I do not think if they were to choose Kian McKenna, he would be able to achieve that in that space of time. I'm not convinced that Oliver Glasner would be able to achieve that in that space of time. Now, that is to acknowledge how good they are as managers, respectively, but perhaps not good enough to pull off that miracle in quite a short span of time. Mauricio Pochettino, very experienced manager from Espanyol, Southampton, Tottenham Hotspurs, now Chelsea, then of course with now the USA national team, he's quite experienced, So for me, he would be somebody to consider. Enzo Maresca is another huge candidate. Now, if you're looking for a little bit of a young manager with a bit of experience, then Enzo Maresca is also there, right up there for consideration. Yes, he may have part with Chelsea for whatever the reasons were. I will not pass judgment upon him, but as an individual, as a manager, he's a very good coach. Pep Guardiola says just as much. He sang praises of him. So perhaps Man United will be looking to interview him should he be interested in the role. So until those decisions are made, we'll have to wait and see what course of direction Man United take. And once those decisions are made, we will get an impression of what Manchester United would love to do. So yeah, that's the expectation on that regard. So let's leave the conversation of Manchester United at that. But yeah, those should be that's what's up with Man United. But yeah, Michael Carrick could be the next interim manager of Manchester United because, excuse me, because apparently Ineos were impressed in that interview. It's not to say they were unimpressed with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but for me, anyway, I would have loved to ask the question: why would you give Ole Gunnar Solskjaer interim role for Man U sacked, and yet the person you replaced him with as an interim was there, never got a chance to improve, to sort of impress it upon you that he was capable of doing the job. Anyways, we'll leave it at that quickly and move on to the next topic, which is Real Madrid. Now, okay, let's pause there. Let's move on to Arsenal first. Arsenal yesterday, Gabriel Martinelli scored a hat-trick as they beat up against Portsmouth by 4-1 to advance to the fourth round of the FA Cup, a competition that they've won as many as 14 times, which is the only competition that Mikel Arteta in his 6 years at Arsenal has only won, and that was in his debut half campaign for the 2019-2020 Premier League season. So, it was a game of so many missed chances amidst the Arsenal dominancy. It was a game in which Kepa Arrizabalaga will have to cut out that kind of nonsense because Portsmouth scored a goal in as early as the 3rd minute, and it's because a shot is sent in Kepa Arrizabalaga's direction. He decides to fumble it there or to bury it quite just in the area before Bishop got the rebound and he scored, and it was 1-0 to Portsmouth before they were forced into an own goal. 5 minutes later, for Dozel to score an own goal to make sure it was 1-1. And from on there, it was 2-1 in the 25th minute, thanks to a brilliant header by Gabriel Martinelli, with Noni Madueke providing the assist. Noni Madueke in the 43rd minute of the game missed a penalty, couldn't even put it on target, put it wide of the mark. Then in the 51st minute, Gabriel Martinelli scored his second of the day, with Gabriel Jesus providing the assist. So, and then in the 72nd minute, he scored another header of another Noni Madueke corner kick to win it 4-1 for the Arsenal. Beautiful and positive performances. Particularly, I did take note of Christian Nogard, who started in the back line alongside Gabriel Magalhaes. I thought Miles Lewis Kelly's performance was a bit lacking from him. I do not know whether he suffered a confidence, sort of a confidence deficit in recent times. But yeah, he did not look the most decent player out there. And yet I was well pleased with Gabriel Martinelli. I was displeased with Noni Madueke despite his burst of assists. And the missed penalty, I thought he had many other moments to make better decisions, to either score or provide an assist, and he chose the latter. So I was a bit disappointed with him in that regard. But yeah, on the match Arsenal to the fourth round of the FA Cup, I'll be looking forward to those draws for the FA Cup. Okay. So, anyways, away from that, I thought it was a brilliant performance from Mikel Merino, who was captain of the team. Started at the pivot or midfield. We saw the return of Kai Havertz. He looked a little bit sharp for a player who had been out for so many months through injury. I thought he did quite brilliantly well. Who else do I pick on as a great performer? I did not think Martin Odegaard and Zubi Mendy needed to be brought on, but it is what it is. Ben White, I thought he did well. Miles Lewis Kelly, like I said, was a little bit lacking. Ethan Wanyeri did okay. Ebeleche Eze, he can always do better for me in that regard, or in my opinion. Anyways, in the other results from the FA Cup, we did have Derby County get smashed by Leeds United by 3-1. Hull City advanced on penalties following a goalless draw with Blackburn Rovers. Norwich City put 5 past Warsaw. Sheffield United got beat 4-3 by Mansfield Town. Swansea and West Bromwich Albion shut the Spurs in a 2-all draw before Albion advanced on post-match penalties, while West Ham needed extra time to beat Queen's Park Rangers by 2-1 in some of those results. So, like I said, in the Italian Serie A, like I said, in the Italian Serie A, there's some games yesterday with Parma beating up against Lecce by 2-1, while AC Milan and Fiorentina shared the Spurs in a 1-all draw. Lazio beat Hellas Verona by 1-0, while Inter Milan and Napoli shared the Spurs in a 2-all draw, with Scott McTominay scoring a brace in that game, while Hakan Çalhanoğlu and Di Marco were the goal scorers. For that game. Very, very beautiful action there. Antonio Conte expressing his fury before being sent off. And even when he was sent off, he walked away to the tunnel, perhaps to go and catch the remainder of the game in the dressing room. And you could see he was still really, really furious. Anyways, away from that, we also had on Super Sunday the Super Cup final, and that was between Real Madrid and Barcelona. But Barcelona came out on top thanks to a brace of goals by Rafinha, another by Robert Lewandowski, while Vinicius Jr. and Gonzalo Garcia scored the only goals of the game. Now, Tijan Reinders scored in this. Sorry, not Tijan Reinders. Rafinha scored in the 36th minute to give Barcelona the lead, but that lead only lasted about what, almost 6 minutes before they responded. Then they went to what's the name of the place? Then Robert Lewandowski scored in the 4th minute of added time of the first stanza to make it 2-1. And then just 2 minutes later, Gonzalo Garcia scored to restore parity. So it was that bit of end-to-end game. We saw the coming on of Kylian Mbappe, who's been out struggling with a knee issue, I think, in his left leg. But he could not make the difference. He was not enough to make the difference. So he ended up literally as another statistic of a player that featured on there. Congratulations, Marcus Rashford, upon winning your first trophy with Barcelona. That was really, really impressive for you or on you. Then it was what it was. They just got beat. It's that simple. Losing by 4 goals to 3. So any questions, please indulge me. Share them. Share them before we come to the end of this broadcast. Why? Because I need to run somewhere and get some work done. There's an overwhelming expectation over things to get done in as far as today is concerned. Then, quickly, Africa Cup of Nations does return at the semi-finals this week on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, Morocco. Let's talk about Morocco, the hosts. The question for me, is the game rigged? Is the game rigged for Morocco against anyone? Because I mean, you've had 2 incidents where blatant penalties should be awarded against Bani Mbomo in the quarterfinals when that game was still 1-0 in favor of Morocco, but then it's not given. The referee doesn't give it. VAR doesn't even intervene. And then you had another penalty shot out in the game against Tanzania. Game was 1-0 at the time. It was never given. Now, whereas all that could be speculative by its nature, I think, or I would want to think, that there is a little bit of truth. Or if you're objective enough, you will agree that at least both those penalties should have been awarded. And who knows, maybe it changes the context of those respective games. I've said this before, and I will never get tired of saying it. For as long as a show host is still in the competition is bound to look really, really brilliant, that and among other things. But for every time a host is knocked out early, you sort of lose the bit of a vibe. You lose the fans that do come to the stadium and things like that. So I don't know if CAF are deliberately trying to protect Morocco, but yeah, that's so anyways, guys, the Africa Cup of Nations, I've not thought it has been better than the previous edition, in my opinion, in terms of entertainment. It's been a wonderful experience. It's given us the moments we would love to see, but I can't help but feel that in a way Morocco is getting carried forward. And while they looked better in both games, who knows? If those 2 penalties are awarded, maybe Tanzania are the ones that make it to the quarterfinal. If they were to restore parity at the time. Maybe if Cameroon restores parity, before Morocco scored their second, maybe that changes the context of the game. Maybe it gives them a bit of an advantage. I do not know. We can always not know because it is what it is. But for me, I do have this feeling that VAR should have looked at both incidences and sent the referee perhaps to the monitor to make his own conclusion. Now, I'm not of the view that the referee be told what to do, but he can always be summoned to the monitor to reassess things. So yeah, in the last edition of the Africa Cup of Nations 2023 that was played in January 2024, I thought the referees looked brilliant. I thought they used the video assistant referee system really, really well. This time around, I have a bone to pick with them, particularly in those games against Morocco. And yeah, so the referee has been a bit lacking. Anyways, guys, allow me to wrap this one here, and I wish you a blessed Monday, a blessed rest of the week. Let's catch up tonight in the extended conversations about everything football. Monday night football is there, so do not miss out on it because Celta Vigo are up against Sevilla in the Spanish La Liga. Juventus in the late kickoff at 10:45 p.m. will be up against Cremonese, while earlier on, Genoa will be up against Cagliari at 8:30 p.m. Liverpool will take on Barnsley. That's at a quarter to 11 p.m. East African time. Paris Saint-Germain do have a game against Paris FC in Coupe de France. So we wish all your respective teams the best of luck going into those fixtures. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure for me, and have a rest of a wonderful day. Bye-bye for now.